The morning sun had barely risen over the quiet streets of New Boston, Texas, when Reagan Hancock's home turned into a scene of unimaginable horror. A 22-year-old expectant mother, Reagan's life revolved around her family, her 3-year-old daughter, and the unborn baby girl she was eager to meet. Yet, on October 9, 2020, a knock at her door brought not the warmth of friendship, but the chill of betrayal and death. Behind that door stood Taylor Rene Parker, a woman whose web of lies had grown so entangled that she saw no escape. Her fabricated life, riddled with deceit, had driven her to plan an act so heinous that it defied comprehension. In the span of a few hours, Parker transformed from a friend and confidant to a predator, unleashing violence that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. This is not just the story of a crime, it is the tale of a pathological liar whose desperation turned deadly. Welcome to the true stories of the Diary of Darkness. Let's delve into the case of Taylor Rene Parker. Born in Sims, Texas, Parker grew up in a rural community where close-knit families and familiar faces were the norm. Yet beneath the surface of her seemingly ordinary life lay a chronic need for attention and validation. Friends and family would later recall her as someone who exaggerated or fabricated details about her life, always chasing sympathy or admiration. From a young age, Parker began spinning webs of lies, often small and seemingly harmless at first. She would tell friends elaborate stories about imaginary achievements, illnesses, and dramatic events. These lies, though often implausible, were delivered with such conviction that many believed her. Over time, however, her deceptions became more intricate, involving fake relationships and illnesses. This behavior not only alienated those closest to her. As Parker entered adulthood, her lies evolved from attention-seeking to controlling those around her. She began using her fabrications to gain influence over relationships, leveraging stories of trauma or vulnerability to elicit trust and dependency. While the lies may have started as a coping mechanism for insecurities, they soon became the cornerstone of her identity, leaving her unable to face the truth without fear of exposure. This desperate need to uphold her false narratives would set the stage for the chilling crime she would later commit. By her late 20s, Taylor Rene Parker had perfected the art of deception. Her lies weren't just impulsive bursts of creativity, but elaborate constructions designed to manipulate those around her. Over the years, Parker had frequently pretended to be pregnant, crafting detailed stories to convince her audience. In the months leading up to the crime, Parker found herself in a precarious situation. Her relationship with her boyfriend, Wade Griffin, was on the rocks, and she believed a pregnancy might secure his loyalty. When they met, Griffin was drawn to Parker's charm and apparent vulnerability, unaware of the layers of deceit she had woven to mask her true self. As their relationship deepened, Parker began fabricating stories to maintain Griffin's attention. She claimed to be pregnant, a tactic she had used in previous relationships, but this time the stakes were higher. She meticulously planned her lie, complete with staged ultrasound images and a fabricated due date. Griffin at first appeared excited about fatherhood, which only fueled Parker's need to maintain the illusion. However, as her alleged pregnancy progressed, the strain of her deception began to show. Griffin's family and friends became suspicious, questioning why Parker avoided medical appointments and displayed none of the physical changes associated with pregnancy. The pressure mounted when Griffin, influenced by these doubts, started to pull away emotionally. Parker, sensing her grip on him loosening, became increasingly erratic. Griffin's growing skepticism and the looming due date pushed Parker into a corner. Exposing her lie would mean losing him for good and facing public humiliation. In her distorted reasoning, obtaining a real baby to pass off as her own was the only way to salvage her relationship. The seeds of Taylor Rene Parker's horrifying plan were sown long before her final act. As the fabricated pregnancy reached its fictional conclusion, she knew her lies were nearing exposure. Driven by desperation, she shifted from deception to violence, meticulously crafting a plan to acquire a baby and pass it off as her own. Parker began researching fetal abduction cases, studying methods and consequences. She scoured medical resources for information about cesarean sections and tools required for the procedure. Her planning even included procuring a scalpel and medical supplies, ensuring she could execute the act with precision. Parker's ability to cloak her intentions under a veneer of normalcy was a testament to her manipulative nature. She maintained the appearance of a loving mother-to-be, fooling even those closest to her. It was during this period that Reagan Hancock, a 22-year-old expectant mother and acquaintance, became Parker's target. Reagan was in her third trimester, eagerly anticipating the birth of her daughter. To Parker, Reagan represented an opportunity, a vulnerable victim whose unborn baby could serve as the final piece in her deceptive puzzle. Parker ingratiated herself with Reagan, pretending to be a supportive friend while quietly orchestrating her grim plan. The contrast between her outward demeanor and inner intentions was chilling. As the days ticked closer to the due date Parker had fabricated, her resolve solidified. The morning of October 9, 2020, began like any other for Reagan Hancock. A 22-year-old mother, she was home preparing for her soon-to-arrive baby while caring for her 3-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, Taylor Rene Parker set her grisly plan into motion. With her due date fictionally looming, Parker knew it was now or never. Armed with a scalpel and a chilling resolve, she drove to Reagan's home under the pretense of a friendly visit. Once inside, Parker turned on Reagan with unimaginable violence. The attack was brutal and prolonged. Evidence later revealed Reagan had been stabbed over 100 times. Parker's weapon of choice, a scalpel, highlighted her premeditation, as did the ferocity of the assault. Amid the chaos, Reagan fought valiantly, sustaining defensive wounds that spoke to her desperation to protect her unborn child. Eventually, Parker overpowered Reagan. With horrific precision, she used the scalpel to cut the baby from Reagan's womb. The child, born at 34 weeks, was alive but gravely endangered by the trauma. Parker wrapped the newborn in a blanket and fled the scene, leaving Reagan's lifeless body behind in a pool of blood. The scene was so violent that law enforcement would later describe it as one of the most gruesome they had ever encountered. With Reagan's newborn in her arms, Parker raced down rural roads concocting her next deception. She pulled over and staged a chaotic scene, pretending to have just delivered her baby. When a passerby stopped to assist, Parker played the part of a distressed mother, cradling the infant and begging for help. First responders arrived and rushed the baby to a nearby hospital. However, Parker's story quickly began to fall apart. Medical staff noted her lack of postpartum symptoms and grew suspicious when she refused an examination. Furthermore, the baby's condition raised alarms. Doctors realized the infant had not been born in a hospital or under normal circumstances. Meanwhile, back at Reagan Hancock's home, her body was discovered by her mother in a scene of unimaginable horror. The brutality of the attack was immediately evident. Law enforcement quickly connected the two events as Parker had left behind a trail of evidence. Her previous lies, erratic behavior, and attempts to stage a pregnancy all pointed to her as the prime suspect. As investigators pieced together the evidence, Parker was arrested later that day. Her initial denials crumbled under scrutiny. After Taylor Rene Parker's arrest, the full scope of her crime became clear. Investigators began piecing together her actions leading up to the murder, and the chilling details were revealed. They discovered that Parker had meticulously researched fetal abductions and had even prepared for this day by acquiring surgical tools. The consistency of her lies about being pregnant, her manipulation of medical records, and her previous history of deception pointed directly to her as the perpetrator. The hospital staff who initially treated the baby became key witnesses. Their suspicions about Parker's story grew when they noted discrepancies in her narrative, prompting law enforcement to dig deeper. DNA testing confirmed that the baby was Reagan Hancock's, not Parker's, further solidifying the case against her. Taylor Rene Parker was sentenced to death for her crimes, but her case has been subject to ongoing appeals. She was convicted of capital murder and kidnapping, with the death penalty being handed down in 2022. However, the actual execution may be delayed as her defense team continues to challenge aspects of her case in court. The legal proceedings remain ongoing. Let me know, what do you think of this case and which you would like to see next? Till next time.